Jesus. There's something floating in my hair. All right. Okay. I think we are all set up. All right. Yesterday, I think we decided that today we would be focused on immigration, what it takes to immigrate to Kenya, what forms of immigration there are, so on and so forth. So, when you're coming here, you typically need an electronic travel authorization. That is the new visa. They will say visa free. A lot of countries do that, like the Seychelles, but you still need something that acts and operates just like a visa. All right, so I don't know why they started this trend. I think what it is if you're a traveler, if you've traveled in the past, like if you're a seasoned traveler, then you know that in the past, when you used to get a visa, it used to be a piece of paper that was stuck to your passport, right? My Chinese visa is still like that, actually, right? And they still have a visa. They haven't switched to this ETA system, right? So when you get a visa, it used to be this piece of paper that was stuck to your passport. What is also a visa is the stamp that immigration puts on your passport. So if you look at your passport, especially if you have a US passport, on those pages, you'll see it says visas somewhere, right? Now a lot of people are going to this electronic like barcode. And those are the countries that are saying that they use ETA, not visa. And I'm assuming what they're trying to say is you don't have to give us your passport. We're not going to put something in your passport. We're just going to issue this electronic, might as well be a visa situation, right? And so that's what Kenya has moved to. There is still a way to get a visa, though, because Kenya is part of the East African visa. If you have an East African visa, it means that you can enter countries on the same visa, and some of those countries are not ETA yet. So if you have an East African visa, then you can enter Kenya, you can enter Uganda, and you can enter Rwanda all on that same document. So there are situations where some of you would still have a visa, not necessarily an ETA, all right? However, both ETAs and visas only grant you access to a country. They do not permit you to do anything in that country. You need a permit for that, right? It works the same in every country that I've been to. There might be an exception. But in the United States, for example, you have a visa. Even if you have a work visa, the visa does not permit you to work. Your work permit does, what they call your working papers, right? So same thing here. You can have a business visa. What that typically allows is for you to enter the country to go to like a business conference or to negotiate business and then go back to your country. Like I have a Chinese business visa. I go negotiate business, then I leave, and then I have them ship me things to build houses and stuff like that over here, right? I'm not doing business in China. I would need a permit for that. So most of the folks that are looking to move here, they need a permit. Okay, the visa is the least of your concerns and the least of your worries. What you need is an actual permit. All right. Now, the top three forms of permit that our law firm normally gets clients that want to immigrate here is the newest one, the digital nomad Class N permit, the OG, the Class K permit, which is the ordinary residency permit. And then there's the investor permit, right? The investor permit is for people who want to do business here. Okay, there is a work permit, but in order to get a work permit, a company would have to sponsor you, and it's not supposed to be a company you own. That's fraud, right? That's immigration fraud. So in some countries, that might be the way you do it. We are aware that there are countries where that's exactly what you're supposed to do: is start your own company and then get yourself a work permit. Those countries typically don't have an investor permit. And some people do get confused because like, oh, I'm not buying stocks. I'm coming to open a bakery, or I'm coming to open garbage service, or whatever. Okay, great, but the way that they define their investor permit, it's if you are initiating in business, then you need an investor permit because you're investing in the local community. It's not necessarily stocks and bonds, right? So the difference among those different things is your Your nomad, digital nomad permit, and your investor permit don't typically lead to dual citizenship. One of the beautiful things about Kenya, hey, how are you? Is that you can get dual citizenship here, right? Folks that move to, say, Tanzania cannot get dual citizenship. They would have to give up their UK, US, German, whatever other citizenship in order to get Tanzanian citizenship, right? Which is not a good deal, right? So, depending on which country you choose, you may not have access to dual citizenship, right? So, one of the reasons that we even chose this country is access to dual citizenship. We spoke a little bit yesterday about passport portfolios, right? So, in their generational wealth planning, the passport portfolios matter, right? And so, if that's the case, that's why we're always going to choose countries that offer dual citizenship, right? So that's number one on why we focus on Kenya, and then we have everything set up here as far as like our law firm and an architecture firm and our construction and all of that. It takes a long time to do that. It took over 12 years to set all those things up, right? So that we could have that vertical integration for you. So we don't do a whole lot of countries. It takes forever to set that up in each additional country. So if our clients want dual citizenship, then really the only two paths available to them is same path as America, marriage, or Class K permit, ordinary residency. The downside of the ordinary residency is you're not allowed to work on an ordinary residency permit. So you got to get it, figured out. But different words, or actually the same words, have different meanings in different countries, right? So that's a big deal, right? So what is legally considered work, say, in the United States, is not legally considered work in Kenya. Okay, so there are ways to definitely take care of yourself. Typically, some sort of remote situation is how people do that. Or if they have dividends, if they have stock dividends, you may not have enough stock dividends to like retire off of your stock wherever you're from, right? So if you're from the UK, you're from the US or whatever, you may not have the ability to just like retire off your dividends. However, in the exchange rate, you might be able to do that here. We have a lot of clients who do that, right? A lot of clients who are like 38 and retire as soon as they get here, and they're good for the rest of their life at the age of 38. So all of those options are there for folks who are making that relocation jump, and it just depends on your own personal set of circumstances, right? So that's the difference between the visa. The visa gains you entry to a country. It does not allow you to do anything in the country. Once you get inside the country, you got to figure out which permit works for you. If you want dual citizenship, residency permit, or you get married, right? You get married 7 years later, you're eligible for dual citizenship, or residency permit 7 years later, you're ready for dual citizenship. Oh, it's night for you, Claudia? Yeah, in the U.S., I typically come on around midnight. Here in Kenya, that's 7 a.m. So you'll catch me late night if you're on the East Coast. Hey, Edward, how are you, man? All right, so if you want to start a business that does business with Kenyans, now you're talking about an investor permit, right? So if you're talking about an investor permit, now the difference between that investor permit and your residency permit is, yes, you can work. That's a big difference, right? So you can make money here. You shouldn't be working for other people. That's called a work permit. That's a different process. We'll get into that in a little while. But you can work as far as building your own business here. And then that permit will lead to permanent residency. It's not going to lead to dual citizenship. It's going to lead to permanent residency. Once you get the permanent residency, you don't have to engage with the government anymore. You have to renew your permit every so many years. If it's digital nomad, it's every 2 years, right? If it's investor permit, it's every 2 years. If it's a residency, an ordinary residency permit, not a permanent residency permit, ordinary residency permit, it's every 3 years, right? So ordinary residency permits are helpful in that you don't have to renew them as often as well, right? All of the permits, it's a 7-year cliff, okay? So all of the permits, nothing really happens until 7 years in, right? Now, if you're married, the only kind of exception to that is if you're not looking for dual citizenship, you're okay with permanent residence, right? Which in America we call permanent residency a green card. So if you're okay with just having a green card forever, then you can marry and get that green card in 3 years, right? So that's the only like fast track. But you can't get citizenship in anything less than 7. That's why a lot of this passport portfolio stuff has to be strategic, right? Because a lot of them have requirements 10 years here, stuff like that. Same thing in the United States. You have to have, what is it? Your temporary green card is 2 years, and then you have to have your, I think, your permanent green card for an additional either 5 years or 3 for a total of 5. And then you can start your naturalization process, which you normally get around 7 years. So it's typically the same, threshold. And so that's the only like fast way. Like if you weren't planning on doing dual residency or dual citizenship anyway, and all you cared about was permanent residency, there are ways to get that in 3 years instead of 7. All right, and I do have some clients who are like, no, we don't care about dual citizenship. We're only worried about permanent residency. It works for whatever it is they got going on, right? That's really, really, really important. All right, we only operate in Kenya. So there are people that might have firms similar to ours that will just push. Ghana is everything. Nigeria is everything. Tanzania is everything. You got to do that, and you got to do it through us. That is just not true. Kenya is not going to be the best country for everyone, right? It's going to depend on what your goals are. And working backwards from your goals is really the only legitimate way to be able to do solid due diligence. Because if you don't know what your goals are, no matter how much research you're doing, you're looking for vibes. Because what are the data points that you're looking for to make this decision if you don't know what your goals are? Right? So, and making a relocation decision on vibes is the worst thing you could possibly do, right? So you want to know what your goals are and work backwards from those goals. Okay. We had a client that was doing an IP firm, an intellectual property firm. Kenya is not the best place for that. If you want to do an intellectual property firm and you want to be in Africa, South Africa is the best place for that. So that's what we told them, and that's where we sent them, right? So we didn't do business with those people because it wouldn't be appropriate. We know that what they want is not what we provide, right? So just make sure that no matter where you're going, no matter where you're relocating to, that you're dealing with someone that you can hold accountable. We're an American company, right? So most of our clients are American. We have some Canadians and we have some UK, which can all tap into the US legal system, right? And so all of our clients can hold us accountable. It's not some random person in a foreign country that can take your money and run, and how do you even file a suit against them, right? So make sure you can hold whoever you're working with accountable. That's number one. And then number two is that you want to make sure that whoever you're working with understands what your goals are and they keep referencing them, right? Like they're working backwards from your goals to make sure that you're in the right place where, like, not just that you can achieve your goals, because I suppose technically most people could achieve virtually any goal anywhere, right? You want the places that incentivize your goals, right? So for a lot of our business clients that come here, they get like 7 years of tax preference. You know what I mean? There's incentives for them to come do business here, not just you're allowed to do business. So it's very, very different. We've had folks that like go to Tanzania, which is a country next door, and they set up businesses there. Tanzania just passed laws that foreigners are not allowed in these 15 sectors. And one of the sectors is like SME, right? So small, medium enterprise, like, so small business you can't do in Tanzania if you're not Tanzania. So now those people are screwed, right? Because they made that decision based off of vibes instead of actually doing real data based on what they wanted their goals to be and working backwards from those goals, right? And there's a lot of people that invested a lot there, even people who like purchased land there, and now they're, passing a law or have just passed a law that foreigners can't inherit land anymore, right? So if you bought a bunch of land there, you got grandkids or whatever, now you're not allowed to get that land anymore. So it's really important to go backwards from whatever the goals are and make those things work out in that way, right? Yeah, Claudia, I remember you. Yeah. you're not working with your agent anymore. That's awesome. We're actually stopping the agent thing. We used to take clients through agents, and then they were like the agents' clients, and then we were kind of like vendors, and then it just doesn't work out well. So we've actually stopped the agent thing. We still do the referrals, but if you want to work with us, then you can work directly with us. Those former agents can just refer clients over to us. But there are intricacies that people don't understand because they're not on the ground here. And there are ways to get got that people don't understand because they're, not on the ground here. So folks will see something like, ooh, that's a good deal, or ooh, that's cheap, or whatever, and set themselves up for failure. And then when we're working through the agents, like yours, Claudia, then it's really, really hard to get that information, back to people, because the agent is typically a strategist. So the agent has a whole separate strategy that they're working, and the services we're providing are just part of that strategy. And so, but they might not be on the ground, like they might not be here. I think your agent was in New Jersey, right? Right. So they might not know what's going on here, and then they mess around and hire you people that are going to rip you off in the long run. So we've actually just gotten rid of that. Yeah, we did our last agent contract like last week, and that's it. We're not doing that anymore. Yeah, no, for you, it's cool because you just move in here. So you just live here, and that was fine. You know what I mean? But if you were doing like an Airbnb, we had some folks that set up a hotel, and then their property manager ripped them off because their agent went and found the cheapest, and so then it becomes a nightmare for those people. So we've seen that happen a couple times now. So we've stopped the agent thing. But there's no problem with your agent, Claudia, like in particular. There's no problem with any of the agents. It's just it's kind of a humbug for us to not kind of own the client, in the sense that like we can just approach them and say, look, sure, we can find these cheap people that'll do this cheap work, but like for example, there's plenty of people that will like underbid us, our construction company, for construction work, right? But when it comes time for that person to come back and fix the work, you can't find them, right? You can't hold them accountable because they're a foreign company. So, unless you want to fly here and spend the next 2 years trying to sue them in Kenyan court, it don't work out, right? But they think they're doing something cheaper, right? And then when those people touch the construction that maybe my original crew did, they invalidate the warranty, right? Because if somebody runs a new plumbing line, from the house out to, I don't know, an AUD or a guard shack or a pool bathroom or something like that, and then the plumbing line breaks, it's the last person who touched it now whose warranty is going to take over. It's not going to be our person's warranty anymore, right? So it's little stuff like that. When an agent comes in, sometimes they have other moving parts, and we can't vouch for those other moving parts, and we haven't vetted those other moving parts because they have nothing to do with us. But then it just creates friction, because when things go wrong on the other side, we're the easy one to contact. And because we're an American company, we're very easy to locate. So they'll come to us and be like, oh, well, my pipes have burst. Don't I have a 3-month warranty with you, after your construction? But then we get there and all this additional construction has been done, by some people that we don't know, and it's that construction is the problem. And then obviously legally we can't touch it. Like, we can't take responsibility for someone else's work. So then we got to turn around and be like, all right, well, go find whoever it is that built you this thing and figure out why they put the wrong type of pipe on, and it created pressure that blew up all the pipes in your house, and have them fix it. You know what I mean? And then they're scrounging, looking for this person who's in country, that they can't find, that maybe they don't even have the right documents on. Maybe there's forged documents and all this ridiculousness, right? So that's why our first vertical integration was lawyer. We automatically bought a law firm to make sure that we have all of that covered. But doing it the right way isn't cheap. So we run into that issue a lot. And then agents normally have some kind of like alternative, like funding source with that client, right? So there's on a retainer or there's some kind of monthly whatever. So the agent's just trying to like keep the client, and not in a bad way or anything like that, but they're just looking for like whatever. So if the client shows that like they don't like a price point, that agent's going to run and try to find on the internet, because they're not here, right? They're not on the ground. So they're just like run on the internet, try to find a cheaper, vendor or a cheaper, tradesman or something. And then it just becomes an issue. So again, Claudia, thanks for bringing that up. Nothing against your agent, anything like that. None of our agents at all. But we're just not doing the agents anymore. We are still doing referrals. So any of you guys who have dealt with us through an agent will probably still see that agent talk to us, and we pay them for referrals. So that we're still doing referrals, and they can still get a referral fee, but they're going to refer clients, and then we're going to own the client process, so there can be accountability. But I'm happy you're enjoying your house, Claudia. And what are you on? Which phone is that? You're on YouTube. All right, cool. Also, if you've worked with us, I know a lot of you guys have been real kind of skittish about the internet and all of that stuff. If you worked with us and now you're out of whatever situations was going on in the US and you're cool coming back and talking about it and having us put you on camera, let us know. That's the one thing that kills us marketing wise, is a lot of you guys like would prefer not put your business out there, and we get it, but if you guys are now in a position where you're ready to do that, I know a lot of you guys come back and follow me and watch me and all that. If you're ready to come back and do something like that, just let us know. We probably, our concept is always full price or free. And so we probably are going to be doing some free giveaways here over the holiday season. And free giveaways, there's always a media release. So anytime we do free giveaways, part of getting that free thing is allowing us to utilize whatever we're doing for you as part of our marketing. So keep that in mind, but those things are coming. I think most of them are going to be around generational wealth this year. So we should be doing a bunch of family constitution and like generational wealth giveaway stuff. So keep your eyes open on that. Okay. So now back to the permits. Let's go ahead and talk about the work permit. In order to get a work permit, you need to be hired by a local company. And that local company, it's the cheapest permit because that local company has to pay for everything. So the local company will handle doing everything that is required in that permit. You simply have to handle documentation. That local company will pay for everything and then go from there, right? The work permits are few and far between because typically there's a process between the government and the company of why can't a local person do this? Same thing with the United States, right? Why can't a local person do this job? It's a similar process. Then they have to overcome that presumption of like you're taking a job from local, and then they essentially like get certified to do it. So the same as the United States, the easiest way to do that is have some kind of high specialization, right? So that's the easiest way to kind of push through that. So very rare that we see work permits. Hey, thanks, Jay Rivera. Now, what you will see way more often is an investor permit. An investor permit is saying that you are coming to do business. You are coming to add economic activity, possibly coming to create jobs. Maybe it's Airbnb, like whatever it might be. You are coming to do some things, right? So we set up an investor permit for that. However, the government doesn't allow people who just, talk and wish on dreams to get investor permits. So the way that they kind of qualify folks that are asking for an investor permit is they require that you put $100,000 in a local account. It's not a payment. They don't take your $100,000. It's not locked. None of that, right? But they want to make sure that you're saying, you're some businessman that's expanding into the country. You're going to create jobs. And Well, do you have the capital to do that? Or is it a wish and a dream and a prayer? What's going on here, right? And so since they're not going to sit down and interview each individual person to see if they're about it, the system is simply put your money where your mouth is. right? If you can't put your money where your mouth is, then we don't believe you. That's it. So, and I actually like that system because you don't have a bunch of like dregs coming in on their investment, permit. It's serious people. So investment permits are always serious people. They got to put up 100,000. It typically, right? So if they're coming in as an investment permit, they're coming in with a factory or a shipping company or whatever, and they have to build a headquarters. They have to build like a base of operations or a warehouse for the Airbnb, right? So not our last client, but the client before last, we just built a duplex for them for Airbnb. Right? They're an agent client, unfortunately, but we just built a duplex for them. They got an Airbnb out in Canando, and so they have an investor permit, right? So they can legally work in this country. There's a lot of people that just come here and do some mess, right? They'll just show up and like start doing business. They'll just show up and start doing some nonsense and have no permit at all. They're really, really cracking down on that. And because we have an immigration division in our law firm, we're uniquely positioned so that when people get in trouble, they call us, right? So they call the law firm and they're like, I'm jammed up. They want to deport me. Can you represent me in court? Da, 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 da. So we get to see how many people are actually getting jammed up because they think they can live here on visas or live here on ETAs and do all this ridiculous stuff. And there's people who tell them to do it. There's people who have successfully done it for over 10 years. Every 90 days, they run across a border and come back, or every 6 months, they run across a border and come back. And eventually, one of these times, they're going to run across a border, they're going to come back, and immigration is going to be like, yep, we got new orders. You get 1 day. That happens in South Africa now, right? So it depends on what country you're dealing with. But that happens in South Africa now, right? Where you'll go to South Africa, maybe you got 90 days on a visa. Okay, cool. Here's your 90 days. You walk across a border and come back, and they're like, why are you back? Are you illegally living here? Why are you back? And all right, we'll give you 2 weeks. Now you're like, oh, I got 2 weeks before I got to get out. And then you try to come back again, they'll give you a day or they'll turn you around at the border, right? And so this country's going to get that way too, of course. So right now, yeah, people do get away with the nonsense, but it's illegal. It's illegal immigration. And definitely not the way to move to another country. Just make sure you do everything the right way. Don't sit up here and set yourself up for failure. Because what the bad part about it, what can really happen to you is you can set up a whole life here. Have money, have bank accounts, have a business that's operating illegally because you ain't got no working papers, and they'll watch. You know what I mean? And they'll decide the same as the FBI. The FBI typically waits 2 years before they bring charges, right? Government, law enforcement agencies typically do that because what they really want to do is they want to make sure that when they bring a charge, it sticks. Like, ain't no way out of it. You're going down. We're going to win in court. Let's go, right? And that's what your high-end government agencies do. And so they might know you're operating illegally and let you rock out, and you start making money. You got big bank accounts and all of that. And then at some point they drop the hammer and they're like, everything you're doing is illegal. We've frozen all your bank accounts. We've frozen all your assets. We've frozen all your properties. We've frozen all your cars, and you're deported. Permanent ban. You can't come back because you've been here illegally operating for the last 6 years, right? So as long as the statute of limitations is, they might take you right up into the day of that, and then everything you've built is frozen. Do the same thing in the United States, right? So it just makes sense to do things the right way and make sure that you find the right permit, execute on that proper permit, and go from there. So the 3 that we do the most often are Digital Nomad, which is brand new. Digital Nomad just came out this year, right? We did the first 2 of them in the country, right? So Digital Nomad permit, the folks that want dual citizenship get ordinary residency permits, all right? And then ordinary residency permits in 7 years become dual citizenship, which is all restrictions removed. Okay, you're now also a Kenyan in addition to whatever else you are. All right. Or investor permit, where they want to do business here. Maybe they want to hire people here. Maybe they want to build, a brick and mortar business like a hospital or a school, or even if they're doing like an online business. If it's here, then you need an investor permit. Right now, you can own a business and get a digital nomad permit, but that digital nomad business cannot do business with Kenyans, or else you need an investor permit. right? So that is the way that that works. Oh, that's cool. Is that TikTok? Yeah, TikTok. All right, so TikTok, it looks like the AI is asking questions for me. Do I have to do anything? Like approve any of that? No. All right, cool. Yes, digital nomad permit, investor permit, residency permit. Those are your three top options. There are niche permits, right? Like there's a mining permit, right? I think we've had one mining company in 12 years, right? And they did aquamarine, right? So aquamarine can be mined in Meru. There's also a green garnet, I think it is, called Savorite, which is probably more rare than diamond because it's only found in Savo, right? Same thing with Tanzanite. Tanzanite's only found at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, right? So not even just like the country, like that spot. So there's a lot of gemstones out here that are actually super rare like that. So mining companies, there is a mining permit for those people. There is something called a special permit. If you're doing something special enough, you might be able to cut the line on everybody and get you need the equivalent of like a congressman and not even just a congressman, you need like an equivalent of like a presidential cabinet member to get you a special permit, right? And so if you had a technology, like back in the day, there was this thing with Australia and power outages, and Elon Musk was like, "Oh, I can fix the power. If I fix it, pay me. If I don't fix it, you keep the technology that I employed to fix it for free, right?" And it was like his first giga factory or whatever, and so he went into Australia and did the whole gigawatt, factory, and like it worked. Whatever they paid him, blah 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 blah. That's kind of like one of those situations where if you're approaching something, you're like, look, I can come and give incredible value to the country, right? But I'm not going to be bothered with your immigration nonsense. So if you want me to come, you guys figure it out, get the permits together, like do whatever, but I'm not going through the nonsense to come help you, right? And so that's where people get like the special permits. And then in order to get special permits, it's gazetted, which means that it's essentially put on the law journal and posted for everybody to see that you're doing it and why you're doing it and all of those things. So that path does exist, but it's incredibly rare. All right. Any questions on permits, visas, or Kenya in general as far as immigration is concerned? Which agent? No, no, no. It's not a specific agent thing. I'm happy you've been here that long, but it's not a specific agent thing. We just don't do the agents anymore. So there's no more agents. They either refer us clients and we handle the clients, or we don't work with them. So it's not a specific agent or anything like that. Yeah. Are you guys okay on Facebook Live? I keep getting a little report about the connectivity. Can you see me saying something about slow connections on Facebook Live? So if you're watching on Facebook, just throw me a comment and let me know if the quality is okay. YouTube, once again, you've been like the most interactive, which is crazy because normally that's TikTok, but not recently. How easy is it to make money in Canada? Very, very. So there's a work process deficit, right? Which is something that you kind of see in all developing countries, like they're figuring it out, right? So you could come with a lot of knowledge on just work processes and how to get business done, how to get work done. There's a lot of companies that don't exist here. You can see good, Edward. All right, thank you. There's a lot of businesses that don't exist here. You can come and start those businesses. There's a Sizzler down the street, Sizzler Steakhouse, that has nothing to do with Sizzlers. So the lady that's there, she's a Kenyan. There's only one in Kenya. It's hers, right? She probably owns the trademark here in Kenya. And so she must have worked at a Sizzlers because everything looks the same. The logo looks the same. The colors look the same. The menu's completely different, of course, but everything looks the same. So probably while she was in college in the United States, she was a waitress at a Sizzlers. Maybe they promoted her to assistant manager. Like, she got a little bit of peek behind the curtain type of thing and came here and opened her own. We just recently got our first Wingstop, our first Cinnabon. KFC's been here for a while. Burger King's been here for a while. McDonald's is not here yet. Trying to think what else. Caravel is here. Stone Cold Creamery is here. Domino's is here. Pizza Hut is not here. All right. So there's all these things. There's a place called what is it called? Subs. It might just be Subs. Look through my videos on TikTok, especially. I don't think I put it on Facebook. Sorry, maybe I'll re-upload it to different Facebook folks. But we went to, it's Subway. You walk inside, everybody's dressed like Subway. Mind you, most places in the world use the metric system, right? Not the imperial system. So most people do not use feet and inches and pounds. They use grams and kilos and meters and centimeters, right? You walk into this place and it's, do you want a foot long? You want a 12 inch, right? And they don't know what a 12 inch is. Like, they don't know what a 6 inch is. They don't know, So it's obviously somebody who worked at Subway that just rate their uniform, everything. They just rate, took what they found at Subway and implemented it here, right? And so a lot of people do that. Like, a lot of my clients, there's a due diligence process to make sure it's not trademarked here. Trademarking isn't a difficult thing to do here. So a lot of our clients will go ahead and do that, where they have worked for a place for a while. They know it inside and out. They know the marketing, right? So, and they can literally just like go on YouTube and look at the old commercials and just like do them over again, right? Because those old commercials were Target Select. Like, those, when you see a commercial back in the day on TV, right? When you see a commercial on TV, it was targeted, right? Not everybody saw that commercial. People in your county or your state or maybe the East Coast saw that commercial, right? And so you could literally go back in and, update the language in successful commercials and then do those campaigns again over here where nobody's ever seen them, right? So that kind of business model works for a lot of people, where they really don't have to figure it out, because the uncertainty is typically the biggest, barrier to entry with most businesses. That uncertainty, people let it get in their head, they start doubting themselves, and all of a sudden, like, I can't do it, blah, 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 let me just go find a job. So if you can jump into something, and sometimes it's not even a one-to-one correlation, right? Like, one of our most successful folks actually did coffee beans from Kenya, which Kenya has extraordinary coffee beans, right? It's one of the top, it's in the top 10 coffee countries always, right? So they did coffee bean sales to little coffee houses in the United States. They did like 1.27 million in coffee bean sales to little tiny, coffee bean roasters, because they worked for either Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts for like 15 years. Right. And when they called, it was like depression, right? Like, dude was like, I'm a assistant manager for Dunkin' Donuts. It was Dunkin' Donuts. Assistant manager for Dunkin' Donuts, essentially live in my mama's basement. Like, the money is not that great. I've been in fast food forever. Da, 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 da. And then came over here, and his understanding of coffee snobs, quite frankly, allowed him to figure out who the target client would be, which for him, it was boutique little coffee houses that had a coffee roaster in the coffee shop. And part of their draw for their clients was they roasted that coffee in the morning, and you could smell that roasted coffee, and that pulled you into the business, right? And then they had pastries and whatever, right? So he identified that as his target market, because they understood the quality of Kenyan beans, right? So that if you're going to sell something at a premium, the people you're selling it to have to understand the value of it. And then he actually got the XM Bank to finance the whole thing, because it was actually creating American jobs, right? Those coffee houses, by keeping them in business, that created American jobs and facilitated the American economy. So the American XM Bank was a resource that could be tapped for that. And then the American XM Bank gave all of those businesses lines of credit, which is something that maybe they didn't have access to previously. So then, that was helpful to them. And so it ended up working out for everybody where the businesses that he was doing business with didn't actually even have to pay him out of their own pocket. The government gave them a line of credit to pay him, and the government covered the entire thing. So he ended up making it was 1.27 million on his first deal. Now, it took him 18 months of making calls on Google Voice to find his client and to set that up and trial and error and all of that stuff. He could have gave up and like, I'm just gonna go work at Dunkin' Donuts again and started making, $18 an hour again, and that would have been the end of that. But he took every no like a champ. He kept calling religiously every day. He figured out who the target was. He, made sure that he kept good relations open with the farmers. And eventually he did a deal and became a millionaire in one deal. So he literally went from the fast food guy that lives in his mama's basement, completely depressed, completely undesirable, to a millionaire. Incredibly desirable, no longer depressed at all. I think half his family has now moved out here with him. He has a beach house in Malindi. So things can change. Things can definitely change for you. Good question, though. Hi, Nessa. Nice to see you. Thanks for the likes on the Facebook side. Hey, Nick on YouTube. Thanks for coming through. All right. And Edward, it's good to see you, man. Reach out to me. All right. Any other questions on that? What if you're not I think you mean entrepreneur, right? What if you're not an entrepreneur? You don't have to be. So that's actually a great question. I'm happy you said that. As an entrepreneur, I kind of always think in that lens. If you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail. So, so we have a lot of clients that actually most of them have been saving for a house. Right. And then they experience like the BlackRock thing where like we finally saved the money for this down payment. And then here comes this American, investment firm and they're paying double asking. Like, how do I outbid Vanguard and BlackRock who are paying double asking price for this single family home in, suburban America. Right. And so when that happens, so those folks have typically saved up some money and they saved up some money, to like buy their first home or like do their deposit, and they keep getting outbid by these whatever, whether they're wholesalers or burrs or investment companies that are paying above asking price, right? And so that's typically, what's happening. And so they have some money saved up for that. And then what ends up happening is for them, if they're not entrepreneurs, but they want to make money here and they're trying to figure it out, we are able to take about $70 to $80,000 and ladder bonds for them, right? And so there are really, really significant bonds that have significant ROIs, right? Like way better than like businesses. So there was one, if you do a Google search about Kenyan tax exempt, that's a big part of it, tax exempt infrastructure bond, right? So Kenyan tax exempt infrastructure bond, you'll see that there was an infrastructure bond that was paying out 18.46%, right? So if you know what the rule of 72 is, then you know that bond doubles its money through compounding every like 3 years and 4 months, right? And so that is one of the ways that people end up locking in. They get these bonds, they pay out twice a year, right? And so they're able to put themselves in a position where they're getting like 100,000 local currency every month, for the next 20 years, right? So now they're essentially covered in that. Oh, hey, Tiffany, how are you? So yeah, it's midnight in the US. Yeah, I know. So it's 7 a.m. here. I actually get up early to catch you guys around midnight. Yes, I do know. We will try to set something else up. Excuse me. We'll try to set something else up where we do, come on maybe like late in the evening. I feel like I feel like if I can, and I'm normally, doing business at that time, but I feel like if we can set something up where 2 or 3 days a week, I can get on at like 4 p.m. I want to say 4 p.m. is like 8 a.m., but 7 p.m. is going to be like, I don't know, 3 in the morning for me, right? So it's never going to be 7 p.m. But we might be able to work it out where like early morning I'm on, and then midnight I come on as well. We've done what the last 4 or 5 days, so I've been trying to come on every day and just create a little bit of consistency with that. But yeah, I do know that it's sometimes I'm on like maybe crowd or closer to 11, but that means that I'm up before 6 and ready to go and out here, doing this at 6 in the morning. So I'm trying to work it out, But thanks for letting me know. So yeah, so hopefully that answered your question over there on YouTube. That is one of the number one ways that folks who can't work, like they don't have a work permit, end up making money, and essentially they retire. Like essentially at that point, and these are typically young couples. Like it's young couples who are saving up for a house. Maybe they got $90,000 saved up. They're pre-30. Like a lot of them are like 28. 26, whatever, and then they just relocate out here. And we typically relocate them on a digital nomad because you have to be 35 years old to get a residency permit. So we get them a digital nomad permit, and then by the time they're 35, they can either choose to just be like, screw that, I'll take permanent residency, or they can switch to a residency permit, but that might reset their time. So they might need to spend another 7 years before they get that dual citizenship. Citizenship is typically hard in any country that's offering it, unless you find a country that's selling it, which there's only, I want to say there's only two of them. Most of the times even when people are saying that there's a country selling citizenship, they're typically talking about permanent residency. Like there was this thing with Ghana a while back. It's like, oh, you go to Ghana, they give you citizenship. It wasn't, you couldn't vote. You know what I mean? So they might have called it like diaspora citizenship, but it was permanent residency. Like, you couldn't vote. I think there was still restrictions on like land and all of that. So it was like, oh, you can be here, but you're not. You know what I mean? Whereas here, when you get the dual citizenship, you are a citizen. Like you can run for president if you want. Like you're a full-on citizen. So again, it just depends on like what you want. That doesn't matter to everybody. I just came out of a client meeting yesterday, actually, where they were like, no, we specifically want permanent residency. And they're still taking the resident permit, right? The ordinary resident, which is not permanent residency permit. So what'll end up happening, which is kind of good for them, even though they think right now all they want is permanent residency, what'll end up happening is because they're still taking the ordinary residency permit, they'll be in a position where they'll be able to choose. Because both take 7 years, unless you marry. If you marry, I think after 3 years of marriage, you can get permanent residency. So in 7 years' time, and they can take separate paths, right? Like maybe the kids in 7 years will be like, I got friends in school, whatever. Maybe I got a boyfriend or something. I got a girlfriend. I want the dual citizenship. And the parents can say, no, I want permanent residency. So they're actually keeping their options pretty open that way. Any other questions on that? Hi. I tell you, YouTube is really, really active compared to TikTok, which is wild to me. I used to do everything like on TikTok. I go live on TikTok all the time, and that's where like the banter would happen. But I'm really impressed with YouTube these last couple of days. Hey, Facebook, thanks for that. All right. So, nothing else on immigration. If there's nothing else on immigration, then I'll call it for today. Tomorrow, we'll be speaking specifically about generational wealth. Oh, no, we did that the construction process. So I'll walk you guys through, how our clients get land out here, how we build the houses, what types of houses we build, how big are they, what's the difference between a smart house and our standard house and all that stuff. So we'll get into that tomorrow. I'll try to come on a little earlier, so I'll try to be on maybe around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But typically I get here around midnight. All right. Looks like there are no more questions. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me for an hour this morning. I will see you tomorrow morning.